What's up guys, it's Mitch here from the DIYRecordingStudio.com, and today we're going to be trying to record an entire drum kit with just one mic. So stick around, it's going to be an awesome video, but let's jump into it. So welcome back to the channel, and first off I want to say thank you to everyone that has recently subscribed to the channel. I've seen a lot of new subscribers coming in and a few new comments and all that sort of stuff, and it's great to see that some people are engaging with the stuff I'm posting. I really appreciate it. But if you haven't already, please hit like, please hit subscribe down below, and don't forget to hit the little notification bell as well. And if you've got any questions about the stuff we do here, hit me up in those comment sections. So today we're going to do a bit of a drum mic challenge using only one microphone on an entire drum kit. And the reason I want to do this is because I've been listening to a lot of audio podcasts lately, and amongst all of that and the stuff that happens on YouTube, you see a lot of people with different setups, and the go-to seems to be to chuck up like 8 microphones or 10 or 12 or 16 microphones on a drum kit. And while if you know what you're doing, this might not be a bad approach, but if you're not familiar with recording drums and the phase issues that come from adding multiple microphones into the mix, you might be better off starting with placing just one microphone. Yes, that's right, just one microphone, and having a listen to that and seeing what you can hear happening in your room. Because if you place just one mic and find the sweet spot in your room, it's going to tell you a lot about what's going on acoustically and a lot about how your drummer plays or how the phase relationships between the different parts of your room are working. And it's a good starting point for any drum session to actually throw up a room mic and have a listen to actually what's going on and use your ears, rather than chuck up a whole heap of close mics and not really get a picture of what's going on in the room with that drum kit. And in some of the podcasts I've been listening to, there's actually some big producers right now who are starting to scale back their use of microphones. Instead of using 16, 14, 12 microphones, they're starting to cut that back down to maybe 8 or even 5 or even 1 in certain circumstances. And that's because sometimes they're trying to capture more of a vintage sound. And on those vintage records like Motown and a whole heap of old country records and all that sort of stuff, they're generally only using one mic to capture that drum sound. So it'd be cool to see what we kind of get happening. And what we're going to do is place the mics at 3 different locations. And the general choice of mic from engineers that are doing this is a ribbon microphone. And that's because a ribbon microphone is what was typically used in those vintage recordings, but also because of the characteristics of how that ribbon microphone works, you can potentially get an amazing sound just from that one mic, as long as you actually place it correctly in the room. So that's going to be the real challenge, I think. And to complete that challenge, what we're actually going to do is place my ribbon microphone in a couple of different positions in the room to see what kinds of frequency responses of the drum kit we actually get. If we position the microphone in certain places, we might get more kick drum or more snare, and that's just going to be the challenge. So we'll move the mic around, find a couple of great positions, and then we'll compare them in Cubase. So let's look at the position we did first, which was the ribbon microphone placed in front of the drum kit, facing the bass drum, and then kind of looking directly down the center of the kit. And I'll play that first without any backing tracks, and then I'll play it with an accompanied piece that I made earlier, and that's just basically to hear how the drums really sit in a mix, because it's one thing to hear a drum sound without any accompaniment, but once you start adding more instruments in the mix, you really start to hear what parts of the drum kit are sticking out and getting enough focus, and you can really hear in a much more accurate way what the microphone is picking up. And for this drum mic challenge, what I'm going to be using is my RM5 ribbon mic from Bumblebee Pro Audio, running through my MP573 mic preamp, which is a Neve style preamp that I built recently, and then going through my patch bay into my interface. And if you want to check out that preamp I built recently, you can catch the full build video here, but let's get into it. So that's the drum kit soloed, and I think we can already hear a focused tight kick drum sound, which is quite great. The snare drum seems a little bit further back behind the kick drum, maybe further back in the mix perspective wise, and it also has a nice roll off on those cymbals. They're not too bright, but they might be a bit too loud, I'm not too sure. Let's have a listen to them with the accompaniment. And with the accompaniment, I think that drum sound is pretty good. I mean, the snare is probably a little bit further away than I'd want it. I'd want it a little bit more up front, but with a bit of EQ and processing, we might get it there. And I still think the cymbals in some parts are a bit bright. They sound quite nice either way, and maybe a low shelf roll off in those high frequencies might get it where we want it to be. But all in all, I think this drum sound with just one mic sounds pretty good. And if we were to add in some close mics, maybe a snare mic, we'd probably get pretty close to a great drum sound that we'd have a little bit more control over. Now for the second placement, I decided to go with an overhead position. So the ribbon mic was facing down over the center of the kit, and let's have a listen to what that sounds like soloed on its own. So that was the overhead position soloed, and I think what's interesting about this is how much fatter the snare drum sounds, and also how much bigger the toms sound. It's crazy, when those fills hit, you just get this massive floor tom sound, and both toms sound great. The snare sounds very fat, maybe a bit too fat. It doesn't have enough of that snare rattle and brightness to it, but all of those drums sound pretty good. But surprisingly, that kick drum sound we got in the first setup is actually kind of missing. We don't have that forward punchiness that we were getting before, and that's quite interesting. The overhead position's getting a very good coverage of the drums it's facing, and then the microphone position we used first, with it placed in front of the kick drum, was getting a lot of that kick energy. And it makes a lot of sense. Whatever drum the ribbon mic seems to be facing directly is what it's picking up a picture of. In that first one, it was facing directly to the kick drum, and it's getting this big kick drum sound. And in this second position, it's facing over the top of the toms and the snare drum, and it's getting a much more full and detailed picture of those drums. But now let's have a listen to it with the accompaniment and see how it sounds in the mix. So that was interesting. I think the snare sounds maybe a little bit too big and not snappy enough maybe. And I also think that lack of kick drum that we had in the first mic position is a bit disappointing. So we just don't have that punchiness that we're getting before. But what's interesting is the fullness of the snare and the fullness of the toms. And once again, if we use this mic in conjunction with a close kick drum mic, like a Beta 52 or something like that, we might get this incredible drum sound with the ribbon as an overhead and then just a couple of close mics. And it's already interesting hearing the vast differences between the two mic positions and what we're really picking up. For the third and final mic position, I decided to try something a bit different, and I didn't know what I was going to get from it, but basically I wanted to get a snare that was a bit more focused, but I also wanted to balance the kick and snare drum, because in these first two mic positions, in one the snare was quite obviously louder and the toms were louder, and then in the first one the kick drum was significantly louder. So what I wanted to try and do is even those up a little bit by placing the ribbon in a position that basically had them lined up. So what I did was place the ribbon microphone off to the side where it was directly looking at the snare drum, and then measured it so it was equal distance from the snare and the kick to try and get them arriving at the ribbon at the same time. And I took this angle kind of off to the side of the drum kit. I didn't know what we were going to get from it, but I thought, hey, let's just try something a bit different. So let's listen to that. So wow, what a difference in that take. I don't particularly like it, and I think it sounds quite brittle and thin and harsh. I don't think it's picking up anything flattering from either the snare or the kick, even though they're quite well balanced. It might be a technique I try in a different way some other time, but I don't know if it's really working. So let's just, for the sake of the experiment, try it with the rest of the accompaniment in the track. Cool, and once again, like, I'm really not digging the sound of this mic position. It's brittle, it's a bit harsh, it's not really doing anything flattering to the drum kit. But that said, if you're looking kind of for some kind of trashy sound, say if you've already mic'd up your drum kit with some close mics and you need something really trashy sounding, this might be the way to go. I don't know. You know, you should never say never. Sometimes you pick up sounds that you think, oh, maybe this isn't what I want right now, but never say never. So I think overall this mic experiment has been quite interesting, and the results have shown us quite a few things. I think they've shown us that a mic position is vital to the sound you're going to capture, and having a really good listen to what your microphone is picking up can make a huge difference in what you capture. The interesting thing about this kind of technique is that whatever your microphone is looking at, it seems to pick up in much more detail in a focused, full way. And it also supports the idea that you should really use your ears when you're placing microphones and have a listen to what they're actually picking up and what they're doing and what they're adding to your mix. Because when we mic up drum kits, we tend to just throw microphones in the places we're told to, or in the places that we've been taught, and we just think, okay, well, that's gonna do it. But really, everyone should use their own mic placements and have a listen to what's going in their own rooms, because one room varies very differently to the other, and the choices of microphone and the choices of preamp and the placement of everything in that room is going to create a massive difference from one person's setup to the other. But what did you think about this experiment? Let me know in the comment sections down below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you've got anything that you would like to see as far as mic setups or shootouts or mic preamp shootouts or anything like that, let me know in the comment sections down below. I'm Mitch from the DIYrecordingstudio.com, and I'll catch you soon.